Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. Plenty of room for you in the stream and also on the phone lines and email. Can get a hold of us however you want with Hail Varsity Radio. Numbers to dial up at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Streaming in StreamYard with ESPN Lincoln and Facebook. ESPN Lincoln, Facebook, and Twitter. Can go there, or Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel at Herbal Essence for Elijah. Chris at HailVarsity.com. What'd Mickey say? Mickey Joseph, thoughts says the team gears up for Ann Arbor. They'll take off tomorrow. We'll give you some takes from Mickey. Brandon Vogel with us in about 20 minutes. The rundown here of what does Nebraska need to do. What do you want out of Saturday? Let me ask that. As a Nebraska fan, maybe you're going to watch through crevices in your hand, you know, the old horror movie theater scene where you're putting your hand in front of your eyes and then you kind of peek. I don't know that it could get that bad depending on philosophy. We'll go there. In hour two, Jeremiah Sirles gets us kicked off. Sirles' take on things moving forward and some NFL. Gary Barnett, the college football weekend. Gary's a golf buddy of Mark Whipple, so he knows Whip pretty well. Get his dynamic and take on just what's going on with the offensive side of the football. What's he think about Whipple, and what's he think about Mickey, and how that relationship is going. Danny Burke, VSiN Sports Network. He'll give you some NFL picks for the weekend. You have the numbers, you have the email, and you can get in on the stream. Jeff has already chimed in and says hi. We'll dive into this, too. Really good from our friend Adam Rittenberg. 5 steps to rebuild 5 struggling college football programs. Okay? And the programs that are highlighted, and this was quick. Texas A&M starts off the list. Northwestern is in there. Stanford, Virginia Tech, West Virginia. Nebraska's not included in this. But it really just comes down to making the right hire for Nebraska, because that's what you've gotten wrong. And the other part of the equation, too, is moving on, like you have from guys that were having success, but that success wasn't good enough. Now you'd run and hug it, right? 8-9 wins. But A&M has been a bit of a mess, despite the money thrown around, despite perceived momentum. Last year with an 8-4 finish, you knocked off Saban at the buzzer. You came in number 6. You had the number 1 recruiting class, but your offense is just stuck in the mud. That's the biggest problem. And can you go find a dynamic play caller? Can you overhaul the offensive staff? So A&M's problems stem from just probably not enough creativity or execution. Stanford, a problem there. They cranked out 3 Pac-12 titles. You need to probably change up your staff if you're Coach Shaw. You've been incredible on the line of scrimmage for a lot of years. Not so much anymore. And Stanford's one of these programs that like Northwestern, is limited in who you can bring in. When you do bring a look at Northwestern, look at the number of NFL guys they've put in. Same with Stanford. They do well with guys that get to the league, and for the most part, a lot of the guys stay in the league. But it's not been even 500 level success on the college football field. You got to get with the times. and that is adapt to portal and other realities, NIL. Stanford and Northwestern are two places that will be hesitant and resistant to doing so because, let's just be honest, both those institutions tolerate athletics. They're centers of higher learning. Virginia Tech, I don't know what to tell you. If you can't win football games in Virginia with that talent, with as much incredible talent that is in that Chesapeake region, you have Maryland around you, you have the Carolinas around you, and then you have the entire state of Virginia, and you can't win. They're still reeling from recruiting misses and then that dear old bugaboo that is staff change after Fuentes.
Well, let's also make note of the fact that Clemson also kind of recruits that entire eastern seaboard really damn well.
Sure, thank you for clearly obvious. That was not great take, obvious misstep on my part, but Virginia Tech's kids still know or remember the Michael Vick era, right? You do, because he was a ton of fun to watch, and you can go get dudes at Virginia Tech. You may not beat Clemson, but you can still go win 8 or 9 games, and they've been a far cry from that. West Virginia's been a spot too because of where they're located. I mean, they got access to a ton of talent, and they've been a mess post Rich Rod. They were on the mountaintop, no pun intended. They were right there, and then they Dana said, "I'm getting the hell out of here." Holgerson had them winning 8, 9 games a year. They were good. He left for a G5 gig down in Houston because they were going to eventually move to the Big 12. They'll do that soon. But he got out of West Virginia, and he just couldn't take it anymore. That's good on him, recognizing that I'm not long for this world because I clash personality-wise with who I got to work with and who I got to dance for. So Nebraska's not on this list, but when we talk about steps for Nebraska here, for the rebuild, it just sucks to even have this topic again. You have pieces in place right now. It just depends what happens next with Trev, right, Elijah? You have guys like a Mickey, like a Bush, like a Applewhite. You have 3 coaches there that are really good recruiters. They've been good developers, and they need to stay, period. They need to stay. We can discuss the other assistants on this staff, and that's for whoever the new head guy is or whoever gets to stay head coach. I mean, there's that topic. But really, for Nebraska, Trev has the answers here. He's laid it out with his vision, not only 500-mile radius, but just how you're going to be able to win in the Big Ten, and that's the line of scrimmage development. And that is the step here for Nebraska. We laid out what's ailing 5 programs that you're used to seeing compete for their conference championship, 5 programs you're used to seeing do pretty well with marginal ranked recruiting classes, and they're knocking on a door for a top 10, top 5. That's a bit of a stretch, but we're not. I can remember when Stanford was top 5, even with Shaw. I can remember when West Virginia was undefeated and had a big moment ball game in a cold climate temperature against Oklahoma. Right? I can remember Northwestern just the other day making Ohio State look awful in the Big Ten championship game. No business hanging around there. A&M. Jimbo's just overrated. Period. He's been really good with some high-level talent, but look where he's been. He was Saban's right-hand guy, helped acquire that. You're going to have good dudes down at LSU. Go to Florida State with talent. Kind of resurrected that from being in neutral. And now you're at A&M because the cupboard was bare at Florida State. That I should never utter those words. But it was, or at least they weren't winning. And then you got A&M, and you get yourself one sweet deal. So with Nebraska, it's finding the right guy, but finding the right guy that can understand how you're going to win and survive in the Big Ten. And that kind of takes you into what Mickey gets about the Big Ten right now. What's he been saying all week? Need to be good with 4 yards.
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm crazy to say that if Nebraska had an offensive line this season that rivaled those top teams in the Big Ten West, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, just put in any offensive line in the Big Ten West.
If you were
in there,
even a little bit closer to par with them.
If you're on par with them, I think you're talking about a top 25 football team for Nebraska this year. And I don't think that's crazy to say. Despite the struggles of the defense has played well enough to keep you in football games. If you just have an offensive line that rivals what the rest of the Big Ten West has, or even the rest of the Big Ten, I think Nebraska realistically is, I'm not saying top 10, I'm not saying college football playoff contender. No, I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten West, but I'm saying
you're not home for the holidays again.
Realistically, they should be talking about top 25. Others receiving votes in the back end of that top 25. There's enough talent on this roster outside the offensive line. So simply put, the way to rebuild this Husker football team is to start by rebuilding your lines of scrimmage. The defensive line is, I think, coming to their own a little bit this season. They're still thin, and you got to develop some talent behind those starting guys. But if you can rebuild the lines of scrimmage, it's not a difficult rebuild, this Husker job, because of fan support, NIL, new facility. You're going to be able to bring players in, especially skill position players. I think the transfer portal last offseason kind of showed that you know what? With the amount of money that's coming in, those sexy positions, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, you're going to be able to get those guys in here. Where NIL is not going to help you out all that much is with the offensive line. And I know that they had that pipeline jerky that came out this week, and sure, that's going to get some dollars in their pocket. But you got to find guys that aren't here for the NIL, guys that want to be NFL-type guys, that have a nasty, mean streak to them. If you can find those guys, bring them in here, develop them into actual Big Ten linemen, it shouldn't be that hard for Nebraska to be competing for, I say Big Ten West. It's not going to be Big Ten West here soon, but you could be competing for Big Ten titles sooner rather than later.
Give me top 5 in the Big Ten, which means you get to a decent bowl game. You're likely to beat a Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota that's been on your half. Don't get embarrassed. Don't let UCLA come in and or USC and boat race you. You're going to take on one or two of them. Right? Survive and don't get embarrassed Saturday. You're not going to probably win, but keep swinging. So to your point about the offensive line, that is Nebraska's, that's the charge with the next head coach, is to fix it. You need to bridge it right now. We talked about what's ailing these other programs here, steps for the rebuild. Nebraska's got to hit and mix and match some JUCO offensive linemen with what's back. And then they need to be able to go be right with who they recruit on the offensive line and let them bake for 2 years. Please, for 3 years, by year 3, you're ready to get in. By year 4, okay, you had your 1 year starting, so you jump off of that point into you come into your own. And then sporadically, your first 2 years, you're not starting or relied upon to be awesome. You're sprinkled in and you get some game reps. All along the while, you're getting reps Monday through Thursday at a station to get yourself developed and better, technique-wise, strength and conditioning-wise, and knowing the playbook, and then a mentality that you've always been high on, right on with the nasty on the offensive line.
And I don't think they're necessarily all that far away. I think this offensive line could look a hell of a lot better next season. With good coaching, good development, this offensive line can look a hell of a lot better next season. With Letovsky getting another year under his belt, I think he's got a lot of potential if he can be developed correctly. Prohaska is going to be another guy that I think can step in, and the injuries are a concern with him, but I think he is a guy that can also make a big jump next season. Newelli comes back, and he can make another offseason of development, and he's had all fall just to focus on himself, focus on his body, focus on his development. So you have 3 pieces right there. A right tackle, you can hide a right tackle with chipping in tight ends, 1 right tackle that is, if it's not great. And even then, 3 offensive linemen is enough to at least have a passable offensive line in the Big Ten. But right now, I think Nebraska has 0, maybe 1 with Hickson. Well,
and think about what Turner's been doing this year versus how he kind of reformed his body to where he should be playing. He should be at a guard. I mean, you still got Turner and Benhart that have time left to go out the right way, right? I mean, they've been in the wars for a lot of years, but they got thrown in early into the deep end. Who's with us?
You got Pete on the line.
Pete, go ahead. Thanks for the phone call.
How you doing today?
Good, bud. What do you know?
Well, I'm going to focus on the offensive line just a little bit. You know, we went out and we went for size and we didn't look at the feet. If you listen to any good offensive coach, they will tell you the offensive line, their feet is more important than their upper body. if you listen to Charlie McBride, he'll tell you, I want an athlete. Mm-hmm. It's critical you start with a good athlete and good feet. I think on the offensive line, we got to get back to not just looking at how tall we are. We have to look for athletes and quick feet, guy that can move his feet. And I think if you start there, eventually it will come. I do not like the single back, no back sets all the time. I think we need to get a fullback. We need to get somebody that can take care of that blitzer that's coming. And I think we need a quarterback that'll pull it down and do a little bit of running. I think that opens up the offense also. But I think the offensive line, we got to get back to getting athletes, kids that we can build. And you got to start with the quick feet.
Pete, good stuff. Thanks for the phone call. I think
that's the Juergens mold.
Yeah.
Athlete, quick feet. He wasn't necessarily going to be the biggest guy on the offensive line, but damn, was he killing dudes last season.
Really, really, really good. And he has got a bright future in Philly. So, yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about this with Brandon Vogel, but it starts with the offensive line for sure. Nebraska spared that list of 5 programs from Adam Rittenberg. But, yeah, it's been – you're kind of waiting for them to get back to what they used to be. If you're Northwestern or Stanford or Virginia Tech or A&M, maybe Nebraska's not even in that train of thought now. Vogues is on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We're streaming and can watch the show always. Get the podcast locked in. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio, and also the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Brandon Vogel joins us, and you can see Vogues. We always talk about that gorgeous football office. As he's got the football. That football behind his left ear is signed by Newt Rockne. Am I absolutely lying, Vogues?
No, that's accurate. I met Newt Rockne back when he was at the height of his Notre Dame coaching career, and tossed him this football and said, "Hey, sign this." And who knew?
Vogues is a vampire. Just so we're all aware. A lot to get into. Vogues, let's spin the wheel here. And we talked about Rittenberg's story on, programs that are stuck in the mud, and Nebraska's part of that discussion, even though they're not featured. And we're still wondering, where the smoke is at with if it's Mickey or if it's a guy that's got some more experience that keeps Mickey and some of this staff together. Maybe it's a strength in numbers decision by Trev or attack that way. And then also you have the point spread in the game on Saturday. So I want to get your take though on if you're Trev and he's laid out the vision, Nebraska and what's ailed them mostly, kind of in reference to this Rittenberg article. You can talk about non-NIL embracement or offensive philosophy with A&M or recruiting misses or void for Virginia Tech or Stanford saying, I'm not down with the NIL. Defense has been a big-time problem for Northwestern, right, with Hankiewicz leaving. So there's always been kind of a catalyst there. For Nebraska, we think it's just been the offensive. It's not just been the offensive line, but the biggest problem's been the offensive line.
Yeah, I think that's a smart place to start. For me, if we're working kind of small to big, broadly to more detailed, like that move to the Big Ten continues to stand out to me. Derek Peterson wrote a story for Hail Varsity in the magazine a couple of years ago, and he talked to John Papuchis, he talked to Tim Beck, about just how hard that was. Like, not only did you have to shift kind of recruiting areas, or at least you thought you did, but it's just a different kind of brand of football. And when I look at it, I think, Nebraska's history is what it is. And there's no changing that. Like, they're one of the 10 winningest programs in football. You mentioned the line against Michigan. Like, it's strange to see Nebraska as a almost 30-point underdog to Michigan, because those two teams over 150 years of college football have won as many games as just about anybody. There's just been I think, reluctance to kind of, because that history is always there. I think there's a reluctance to kind of maybe admit where you're at and admit that, hey, we need a coach to come in here and like build this, like this was USF or UCF, a Florida program that didn't exist before the 70s. And that might be what you need. And it's hard because people hold those traditions that come with winning as many games as Nebraska has pretty dear. And sometimes you got to pick and choose in terms of what you're going to keep, what is portable for this current era of college football, and what just has to be left by the wayside. And I think Nebraska, Mike Riley wasn't the guy to do that. Scott Frost, we thought maybe his knowledge of it would be the guy who could meld those things, but
what happened here?
I think my internet crapped out on me.
I don't know what happened. I think the
I've never seen that
hamster
before.
died in the back room. That's power in this joint. You were hitting on incredible insight. Give me the last 30 seconds. Rewind and repeat. It's okay to admit you got a problem, right? And Nebraska can't rest on its laurels. And maybe Nebraska's rested on their laurels on top of constant turnover.
Yeah, I think that's broadly where I kind of left things, which is, Nebraska's history affords it a lot of advantages, but it may have prevented it to this point from just kind of ripping off the Band-Aid and being like, okay, here's where we're at. Like, I mean, you look at it now in this current context, and it's like you don't beat Illinois. You don't beat Purdue. And I'm not saying that as a way to, take anything away from those programs. But historically, like you go into those matchups kind of from a Nebraska perspective, I think, being like, well, it's Illinois. And that's fair because for 130 years, Nebraska was just better than Illinois. It was just better than Purdue. And it's not right now. And I think that balancing like the tradition of the program with trying to build it for what works in 2023 and beyond is difficult. And you got to hit on the right guy who's able to do that. And it might mean some hard choices. And when I look at it broadly, I think that's why Nebraska is where it is right now.
Well, and Brent, I think the point you're getting at is that Nebraska could use a full rebuild right now, and maybe that previous coaches haven't committed to a full type rebuild. But I look around college football with NIL, the transfer portal, and just with what other schools are doing. I mean, for Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, it was about a 2-year rebuild before they're back to relevance. Illinois under Bielema, a 2-year rebuild before they're back to relevance. Even Florida State is back up into the top 25 this year after looking down and out for the past couple seasons. So it is now the ideal time to be trying to make a full rebuild just with the options that you have available for a rebuild?
I think your ceiling is higher sooner, but also you might get fired sooner. So if it used to be like, oh, a new coach is going to get 4 years, well, we've already seen Riley only got 3, and we see that elsewhere throughout the country where if things seem like they're not trending upwards fairly soon, like ADs will pull the trigger. And I don't know if that's the case at Nebraska with this next hire that it makes, because another, I guess, piece of the conversation here is just how much turnover Nebraska has had, not just at the football coach spot, but also the AD spot. And that makes a difference too. So I agree with you. Like, I think there are ways to flip things in a hurry that didn't exist previously. That's good. With that comes, if you don't do it quickly, you probably have a shorter leash than you would have, say, 20 years ago as a new head coach.
I think before Scott Frost was hired, it was kind of accepted that a 4 to 5 year rebuild was the amount of time that he would have. And if you had to predict right now, how much time do you think the next coach has to get this Husker football team, I don't want to say back to a bowl game, that might be a low bar, but back to a point of relevance?
Yeah, it depends, I think, a little bit on who it is. And I will say Billy Napier at Florida this year, I think, did a really good job of inviting media in during the spring, like inviting people in and saying throughout the whole thing, like, hey, this is going to be a slow process. If you don't do that, I mean, I think most coaches now, kind of the average would be 3 years instead of, so down from 4 to /5 from in the past. Like, if you don't show something after 3 seasons, it's kind of hard to think that coach sticks around. I mean, we kind of witnessed this last year with Frost after 4. Trev made the decision that he did with some caveats, and it kind of struck people, maybe not in Nebraska, but I think nationally, as a surprise of, oh, most coaches don't get this 5th year.
Vogues, the name that's been popular this week is Gary Patterson. And what your reaction to Gary? And we've kind of done the old straw poll with our guests the last 24 hours on Gary. Does Gary make sense in the sense because of his experience, his work as a builder at TCU, and then the reality that, okay, he could keep some key members that are on staff now, they could stay in Lincoln?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last point makes some sense. My hesitation with Patterson is, he made public comments last year at TCU, basically expressing his discomfort with the transfer portal, with NIL at various points. Like, what does it take to hire a coach who said, like, I don't like this? And I think, you know what, if you polled the majority,
none of them like it, but they're dealing with it.
No. Yeah. If you polled the majority of FBS head coaches, it would say, like, yeah, I don't love this. But it's reality, and you've kind of got to deal with it. So that's the thing that gives me a lot of hesitation with Patterson as his number has bubbled up or his name has bubbled up. You can't really take issue with anything that happened on the football field. I mean, you look at TCU, switched conferences multiple times, went into the Big 12, didn't miss a beat, something Nebraska post Bo Pelini did not do, moving to the Big 10. So, I mean, there's like the on the field credentials are kind of unassailable in my mind. It's just how that TCU tenure ended, like how much discomfort he felt willing to share about kind of where the modern game of college football is at, and whether you agree with him or disagree with him is kind of irrelevant. It's just what it is. And can you build a program over the next 4 or 5 years, rebuild a Nebraska program, if you wish NIL didn't exist, and if you are uneasy about the transfer portal? And those are big questions to ask. Those are the kind of questions you get to when you're actually interviewing a coach, if you're the AD. But from the sidelines here, it gives me pause.
Vogues, hang on. I got to get your take on Michigan and the line and Nebraska's plan of attack. Couple minutes on the other side. You good with that?
Yep.
All right. There he is, managing editor with HailVarsity.com and magazine, Brandon Vogel. Get his book, The Holiday Season Around the Corner, while you're getting the Hail Varsity subscription, HailVarsity.com/subscribe. Also get Dream Like a Champion. John Cook, Brandon Vogel hammered out a great book, and all Cook does is win championships and recruit #1 recruiting classes time after time. More with Brandon Vogel. Sirles on the way in 25 minutes with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity on a Thursday, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Brandon Vogel. Little overtime with us. Vogues, what are you focusing on with the I-80 Preview, your podcast that you can find with Hurrdat, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play? But, how do you keep this thing so you can walk out versus crawl out Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, it's not an easy one. Like, I thought Illinois and Minnesota, with the way that they played, posed some matchup challenges for Nebraska. Michigan does that as well, but also poses the talent challenge, which it would for any team in the Big Ten not named Ohio State. And plus, you're on the road for this one. So, Mickey Joseph talked today about trying to slow things down, which I agree with. You got to try and minimize possessions and give yourself a chance there. That said, Nebraska hasn't been able to hand the ball off and run it that well for weeks now. So, if you want to break the game down broadly, it probably comes down to, could you have some unexpected success there? This Michigan team is super impressive in my mind. Not only did they do what they did a year ago, but I think they're even better this year, which wasn't a given how much NFL talent they lost on that defensive side, and then lost one of their two running backs, and Blake Corum has not missed a beat. So Michigan's just a team that wins in the trenches, and it's why I think it gives them a shot again this year against Ohio State, even though that game's on the road for the Wolverines. And it's why I think it makes this game a challenge for Nebraska, because Nebraska's not just lining up and beating teams in the trenches a whole lot of late. To go all the way back to where we started.
Look at that whole full circle. I love it. And Vogues, I think Nebraska, what's interesting, and we'll get you out on this, what's interesting about Nebraska is if you could have had Casey. I mean, you look at how Indiana hung around. You look at how Maryland put a scare with little Tua throwing the football and some of the athletes. I mean, those are the two games this year that, all right, Michigan looked mortal.
Where someone went and challenged them through the air.
Yeah, and I get, if I'm Whip, just to play devil's advocate for a second, if I'm Whip and I'm looking at Michigan film, like, well, you beat these guys by trying to get into a shootout. Okay? Well, you just don't have the personnel. I mean, I think you'll see Smothers Saturday, and I think you can take the leash off, so to speak. Yeah, use his legs, but see if you can find some of that back shoulder magic.
Yeah, I would agree. When you're looking at a spread that's 28 points plus, like, you basically start from a perspective of like, well, if the underdog hits a handful of big plays, like maybe they hang around, and then you move to turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. And all that stuff is a way to say, like, straight up, like, if this game kind of unfolds like a football game, it's gonna be tough. They're a 28-point underdog for a reason. So, it would have been nice to see Casey Thompson kind of take his shot here. It would have been great for Casey Thompson to get the chance to play in the big house, but it's an opportunity for someone else. I think and I agree with you. I thought Joseph kind of teased this a little bit with his comments today. Like, I'd be a little bit surprised if Smothers wasn't the first guy out there based on how last week's game went, but we'll see. And he definitely gives you some options to change the offense a little bit. Will they do it, I guess, remains the big question.
Yeah, we need the old Whipple and Mickey cam, right? Remember the old Bo cam? Do we have two or three? Do we have two or three people standing between Whip and Mickey?
I know this is like fantasy land stuff, but because of the way this season is, the way that it is, I'm like, you're not just going to come out and run the wishbone or, the power I option based on a week. But if you were, like, in this current scenario with an interim head coach, 3 games left, it's kind of the perfect time to do it. So, yeah, I don't think we'll see it, but
never say never.
I can't rule it out. As boy, it'd be interesting.
Working on
how much option can we put in 6 days?
Working on our Veer game, Vogues. Just saving it for Barry next weekend. I love it. Brandon Vogel. Vogues, we'll talk to you Saturday, bud. Take care, and thanks for a few minutes.
Thanks a lot, guys.
There he is, Brandon Vogel. Vogues, don't kid yourself. He was probably a wicked Veer quarterback in Northwest Nebraska. I think it was Hemingford. I think it might be Hemingford. I think I got to make sure it's kind of like Norfolk. Mm-hmm. You got to make sure you get it right.
Louisville?
Yes.
I got killed for that one time. Not on this show. I was out umpiring.
Sure.
I got killed for saying Louisville.
And Hooper, Nebraska. Hooper, Nebraska. Hooper,
oh, yes.
Hooper. It's
yes.
Hooper.
There's some good ones out there.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it. Mickey, let's get his thoughts as he met with the media today. Kids are packing their bags, ready to head to the big house.
Well, the guys came out this morning with a great attitude. I thought they detailed the entire practice. Thought they were. I loved their focus in all three phases of the game. I think they understand that we got to go in there and play at a high level. We're playing a very good football team, and it's one of the greatest venues in college football that you can play in. So we got to be ready for the challenge, and I think they're gonna be ready for it.
So Casey is not going to go. Casey does want to go. It's just not going to happen this week.
Well, he's been in every meeting, and he's been in every practice. In the area, talking to him. But Casey wants to play. Like you say, he wants to be his competitor. He wants to play, but he understands right now that he can't play at a high level, so we won't put him out there. But he's been really good as a leader out there with those young quarterbacks.
So who is going to start, Elijah? Who is behind center?
I think we're all going to find out Saturday about 3:30. I'll let you guys know.
So whoever is behind center, what's Mickey need from his quarterback Saturday?
They had a good practice. They practiced well. But you don't get graded on practice. You get graded on game day. So it's about who can manage the team on game day. Just like to say about coaching, this would be a great profession if we didn't have to play the games. But we had to play the games. So they got to be able to manage this team during the game. I mean, you can do it at practice, but now I got to see you manage this team during the game.
So offensive success, right? That's holding on to the football. What are some keys to it Saturday?
Well, yes, I think the number one thing we had to do, we got to be able to hand that ball off. Hand the ball off. Slow it down. That's what we got to do.
Real quick, when it comes to his confidence, why is he confident in this team?
I don't think they back down from anybody since I've been here. I mean, since before I got here, you can watch them. They don't back down. They don't throw in a white flag. So you got to respect that out of those kids. That they're busting in butts, not getting the results that they want, but they understand that this is a great opportunity. And I explained to them that Michigan is playing for something. You're not playing a Michigan team. They playing to be a number one seed in the BCS championship. So we understand that, but I think they're okay. They understand the opportunity.
There is the tunnel aspect. We'll hear from Mickey and a edited psych-up tape from one Will Compton. That's the hope. Maybe Michigan gets funny in the tunnel again. We'll wind down hour one. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, winding down hour one. We are presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. And a reminder about buckling up. 1 out of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Is Saturday the trifecta? You pray not when it comes to tunnel violence. Okay? It's been an issue. Penn State, Michigan, James Franklin, Harbaugh. There was a food fight. It wasn't quite Animal House good, but there was stuff thrown. Don't know if it was a taco or a burger or a hot dog. It might have been a hot dog that got chucked between Penn State and Michigan. You
can't throw hot dogs in the tunnel anymore? This is America.
You can't have ketchup on your hot dog in Michigan. I don't think that flies. You had the assault, brother. All right, we got our butt kicked on the field. Let's corner some dude without any helmet and give him a sinus surgery. That happened 2 weeks ago. And then now here comes Nebraska. One way in, one way out. Mickey on the tunnel.
No, I have faith in University of Michigan administration that they're going to do everything in their power to make sure we don't have altercation. We're going to make sure our kids get in the tunnel, and we have a plan to make sure our kids get in the tunnel and get in there and get in there safely. But we're not going there for that. We're not talking about, the altercation, what happens in the tunnel. We're going to be professional like we always are, and we're going to get our kids in and get our kids out. But I don't see a problem happening.
Now here's the pep talk from Bussin' with the Boys. They are there in Ann Arbor this weekend.
Will Compton, he wants a fight. Not that kind of fight.
No, but he wants Nebraska to leave it there. Of course, Taylor is his partner in crime with Bussin's a Michigan grad, so there are stakes. This is heavily edited because Will was on a Goodfellas-esque type role, Joe Pesci style.
What a disrespectful line. I'm telling you. Disrespectful line. You guys want a data point? Here's a data point. We lost by 3 points last year. There's your data. Everything else, toss it out the window. You don't even need to look at it. Casey Thompson, we need you to play. I don't know what's going on, brother, but the boys need you this weekend. O-line, here's the recipe, boys. Swing first and get the fight started. 60 minutes of you football. Stack the box. Put your on Blake Corum's head. Make that quarterback beat us with his arm, and that's your recipe. And it's got to be 60 minutes of nonstop you football. This is David versus Goliath. This is a Cinderella story. Nebraska plus 28.5. I feel good about it.
Whew. That was almost as many F-bombs as Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Desert Scene Casino. 70 plus in 2 minutes and 13 seconds. How long was that clip?
That was 35 seconds.
35 seconds. I think we counted 9.
I can count up real quick.
You're fine. And what was hilarious, Elijah's like, do I need to edit that? Yes. Yeah, not the obvious, but there was some other choice verbiage. Good for you, Will. He's sitting there, shades on, cigar in hand. Cinderella's, dude, Nebraska should never be a Cinderella. They are, but...
I like how he goes through all that and then goes at the end, Nebraska just to cover.
We'll see what Sirles thinks. Jeremiah Sirles to kick off hour 2. Gary Barnett next hour. It's Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We say hi to our favorite Husker lineman, longtime NFLer, Jeremiah Sirles. Sirles in his Husker and football den. Sirles, what's good, man? Good to spend time with you. Have you achieved getting Bambi yet?
Not yet, but my dad is headed into town, and we are going out tonight to go ahead and start chasing some deer and seeing what we can do. Saw some big boys show up on cam last night, so that is all exciting stuff. The weather took a shift from yesterday when it was 75 degrees, so it's getting a little cooler, which is all nice and good. So we are on our way fresh into deer season.
That is all good. I was whining to you off air. Junior turned 16 today, and his vehicle I'm sifting through, and you just shook your head and said Schmidt should have got him an 04 Honda.
Yeah, man, you get those 04 Civics, they just can't die.
Is that what you drove, your first car?
I drove a 1999 F-150 bench seat, 5-speed on the floor, nice. No power windows, no air conditioning. It was my dad's old work truck, and that thing went through hell and back and never quit on me. I ended up turning it in for $500.
Reminds me of the story of Andy Janovich when he was playing with the Broncos.
Yeah,
still driving his old Ford. I think it was a Ford.
Yeah,
still driving it, and said, "Yeah, I just spend all my money on hunting gear and chew."
Yeah, that's a good priority, quite frankly.
After my first year in the league, I came back home and drove it, and I drove out to meet Emma. She was in, where was she at? Wichita? Washburn. She was at Washburn. And we drove out to watch the Super Bowl there. And on my way home, the heater went out in my truck, and it was like minus 20 out. And I was driving in my full Carhartts, like gloves on, hat on, and then my windshield wiper fluid stopped working. And so I started using like the Propel bottle with the windshield, and I'm driving home like, yep, that's it. I'm done. I play in the NFL now, getting a new truck, and drove to Woodhouse the next day and got a brand new F-150.
Look at you, Sirles. I love it.
Hey, First big boy purchase.
There you go. Well, Junior's going to be working. He may be scooping snow for you if you're.
Well, I got dog poop that needs to be picked up, so he's welcome anytime.
Okay. Well, once he starts doing it at home, maybe we'll send him your way. Big weekend. Speaking of not wanting to misstep in different spots, going to be a little difficult on Saturday for the boys, isn't it?
Oh, just slightly. I think that the line was 29.5 when I first looked at it, and I don't know if it's moved since, but I think that that's a very accurate line. And that's just awful to think about. That we are almost 30-point dogs to a Big Ten team. And granted, Michigan may be one of the better teams in the country, but it just shows where we're at as a program right now. And it's just really, it's not going to be pretty. There's just no way. I don't think there's any way the Huskers can win this game.
No. And do you worry about fight? We were talking with Vogel earlier this week, and I trust his radar. And he's like, look, we're fighters. You're supposed to say that. Totally get it. But he's a guy that I don't think will let other guys fold. I don't see that. You guys didn't have some of the best seasons. You had good seasons, don't get me wrong, but you had those kind of tipping point ball games, right, where you were close, and had you won at Michigan State, for instance, you're probably playing for another Big Ten championship opportunity, right? You guys always would bounce back after a tough outing. And this team's now working on a few game losing streaks, and they've been a part of it. I mean, everyone in this locker room's not had that 9-win, 8-win season. I mean, they at least won 2 in a row this year. That's great, but man, it's really a death march right now.
It is, and and it's easy to say we're fighters because we are. We're all ultimate competitors. Everyone who plays at the collegiate level, the NFL level, I mean, any level, you're an ultimate competitor. You're an elite athlete, and so there is no quit in you. But what there is in you is doubt. There's doubt, and doubt is a terrible thing because whether you want it there or not, it lives there. Because if you don't know what it is to overcome and what it means to bounce back and win those big games, and there's always that piece of you that's like, here we go again. I thought maybe we were going to get past that point this season, but I really just don't think we are. And that's just because not enough people on the team have been in those shoes. Not enough guys that are leaders have been able to step up and say, hey, no, it doesn't have to be like this. We win close games. We win big games, but I think that I talked about on the podcast this week with Jessica Cootie, it's along the lines of if you go into this game already defeated, like you have no shot. Now, it's one thing to go in and be realistic about where we are as a team, but you can't walk into this game as a player, as a whole, and think, man, we're just going to get killed, which I worry at times could be partially part of this team's psyche. Jeremiah
Sirles with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Sirles, when you look across at what Michigan has, I think that mentality could seep into the program. And we talk offensive line, so I got a Michigan defensive lineman I want to get your take on because it's the task that the offensive line faced this week. Mozzie Smith. He's a guy who's been eating up double teams all season long, and he was preseason #1 on the Athletics freak list in college football. Let's take you through the numbers. 22 reps on the bench press, but that's not 225. That's 325 pounds for 22 reps. A 4.41 shuttle, a 6.953 cone drill, and they also had to build a modified jammer machine, which I'm not sure if you can explain that machine, Sirles, but they had to make a modified one that went up to 400 pounds on each side for this guy. He's ridiculous, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out how the Husker offensive line is going to deal with a guy like that.
Well, all I know is Casey Thompson. If I'm him, I'm going, ow, I hurt one more week because I don't really feel like dying on Saturday. I have Chubba and Logan. Like, if you're listening, pals, life insurance, State Farm, Jake, call one of those people because it could get ugly. Wow. This Michigan D-line is really freaking good. I put them up there against Bama's and the Georgias, and what they do from top to bottom, from pass rushing to stopping the run, is fantastic. And, you look at the Husker offensive line that has been less than subpar. I mean, there was multiple times last week where, again, it looked like a race to the quarterback off the edges, and the DNs are hitting each other at 9 yards, and we're not getting a ton of push in the run game. But then there's other times where we looked like we were doing okay, but the definition of a bad offensive line is inconsistency. And that's what we are. We're inconsistent, and we're more consistently bad than good. And, those are just things that aren't – but that guy is just an absolute freak show. He's going to go on to make a ton of money in the NFL. He's going to go on to be a very high draft pick. And, you got to take care of a guy because he can wreck a game before it even starts if you let a guy like that get going.
Sirles, the thing that stuck out to me, many with Mickey this week, was being okay with 3 to 4 yard runs. And I love that opening script. I like the double tight. I love that Grant busted one for almost 40 to start, and it was downhill. Nebraska looked like they could run the ball. Now, Nebraska's had a problem for a lot of years of running the football when they have to run the football. But they abandoned the thing before they needed to, I guess, is the way to put it, against Minnesota. You're up. That's what's miraculous, is you're up on that team with their backup coming in, and you're up 10, which has got to feel like, almost 3 scores. Excuse me, and they flip it around on you. I mean, a hell of a coaching job for Minnesota and finding a way, and I know that pains you, but they earned it in the second half last week. But Nebraska just can't do it or won't do it, running the football. And they got to be comfortable with just holding on to it and kind of playing some smash mouth, as hard as that sounds here Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and yeah, all credit to PJ Fleck and that staff. They rode that boat real hard in the second half, and it worked out. But, for the Michigan game, and here's what pains me a little bit about our offense, Schmidt, and I might go on a little tangent here, but I think that Mark Whipple is a fantastic scripter and opening play caller. But what I've come to realize is, here's what Mark Whipple is. He's an old school coach, and he's a box checker. And what I mean by that, I played with coaches before. This is not a knock on Whipple. I played with a lot of coaches that are like this. They have their script. And if they have success with plays within the opening script, they won't go back to those plays until they have checked off all of the boxes on that script. And sometimes what happens is, by the time you get back to what was successful after you've checked off all these other boxes, the defense has already made the adjustment, and now it's no longer a successful thing. I think the great coordinators and the newer coordinators and the minds of football that are doing great things are, okay, yes, we have our openers. This was early. Let's keep hammering that, and then we'll get to our openers. Like, it doesn't have to be considered down the list of how things go. I think Coach Whipple is a box check, old school. We're going to just knock off all the openers, because when you see the success we had running the football downhill, and then we didn't do it again, and then all of a sudden we tried to come back to it when nothing else was working, then it's no longer successful. I think Mark Whipple and this staff has to be able to say, this is successful right now. Let's keep doing it until they stop us, and then we'll pivot, and then we'll shift, and then they have to game plan against us, and it's no longer us trying to game plan against them, and then we may have some success with this offense. Now, against Michigan, it's not going to matter. They're just much better than us. But when you start talking about teams like Wisconsin and Iowa, you have to go into games with so much better game plans than what we've had the last couple times.
Jeremiah Sirles with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Sirles, you mentioned the fact that Michigan is just that much better. So do you expect to see, I don't want to say a white flag mentality, but if Nebraska gets down early in this football game, do you think they start keeping some of their cards close to their chest? Maybe keeping in a quarterback like Chuba or Logan, even though they might not be finding success, just to say, let's keep some things close to our chest before Wisconsin and Iowa? Is it just too far gone in the season for anything like that?
I mean, yeah, it's too far gone to have anything close to the chest. Unless you want to put in a completely special, different kind of gimmicky package, then yeah, sure.
I guess the question I'm referring to is going to a more quarterback run heavy system with a guy like Logan Smothers.
I think Logan should start, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if Casey Thompson doesn't start, Logan Smothers should be QB1 and should get his opportunity. It's been a long time since Iowa where he had his one opportunity to go out there and take care of the entire game and do his thing. We saw what Chuba could do last week. It was not great. So let's give Logan an opportunity. Granted, it's against a freaking werewolf of a defense, but let's see what he can do. And let's start building for next year. I'm already kind of on the mentality of let's build for next year, because this year, let's face it, we're not going to a bowl game. So let's see what the young cat can do. Let's see how he's developed, and let's see what this offense could look like if he's back there, because we just don't know what the plan is with Casey. So there's a lot going on back there, but I think that Logan should get a fair shake over the last 3 weeks here.
Let's go into the mind of Trev here for a moment and talk about the coaching position. And, Mickey's context is important. We've kind of always prefaced what we're saying with, this is a really tough hand that's been dealt to Mickey. And he's navigated, he's managed, he's motivated. And Nebraska, until things went sideways, they were in it against Illinois. They had a great plan and got out of the gate well against Minnesota. Just couldn't finish or play 4 quarters that he talked about. As you look at Mickey, do you think he's what do you weigh more, the situation he's been in, or where they finish with the way they end the year, 3-9, 4-8, 5-7, whatever it may be? How are you judging? How are you looking at this opportunity for Mickey when it comes to outside hire versus Mickey's the guy?
I think Trev, in the back of his mind, knows that he needs to go outside higher. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to give Mickey a fair shot, but I do think Mickey's facing an uphill battle from the beginning, just because of everything that's gone on. And I just don't think Trev can look at the state of this Husker program right now and say a first-time head coach is what we need. A first-time guy that's going to be at the helm is what's going to right the ship here. And I think for Mickey, a lot of what he's done is done really good things, but I also think he's proven that he doesn't want to go anywhere. My hope would be that if someone comes in, Mickey wants to stay around. Mm-hmm. I think he's a great recruiter. I think he's a really good coach. I don't know, maybe he could be a coordinator. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that a new head coach would be really dumb to come in and just axe Mickey Joseph. Now, a lot of it's going to be dependent on what he wants. I think that's going to be more of a Mickey call than what a new head coach comes in here and wants, but I think that it's going to be a lot based off of how he handles the rest of this year, how he has the team prepared, not necessarily the product on the field, but are they prepared? Are they doing things right? Are everyone doing things in the week better than they have been?
Do you think this team, does it look better?
At times. I think at times. I think that our defense looks a lot better than it did early in the season. I think a lot of that has to do with they're playing more free and they're playing more foot on the gas. But the problem is our guys run out of gas in the fourth quarter because we just don't have the depth. Ty Robinson played like a machine for 3.5 quarters, and then the last fourth quarter there, he just was gassed. And we just don't have the depth of rotate guys in to keep guys like Ty and Feast and those guys fresh. We're just asking them to play too many snaps.
Do you see pieces and potential in that offensive line room for whoever comes in?
Yeah, you get Nuri back, you get Teddy back. There's 2 instant starters back. You have now Henry Lutovsky, who's struggled at times this year, but he's now got experience. You've got some pieces there. I do worry about the depth as far as developmental guys that are young, freshmen, sophomores. I looked at some of our depth on the sideline. I was like, well, you don't look like Big Ten O-linemen to me, fellas. And so there's not a lot of depth there. So I do worry about that. But I think that the bones for an instant upgraded O-line is still there.
So before we get you out of here, let's quickly go some NFL if you don't mind, because the Bills dropped a tough one over the weekend. The Jets might be for real, but I think the bigger story from that game is Josh Allen and his health moving forward.
Yeah, man. UCL, I was there in 2018 when he did something similar to his elbow, missed a few games, and old Nate Peterman had to come in. So, it's just, I'll tell you this. I think that the Vikings have a really good shot going into Buffalo and beating them if Josh Allen's out. I think that that's a team that is hitting on strides right now, but yeah, the Jets are for real, dude. The Jets defense is for real. If their offense can be serviceable and not turn the ball over, they can win some football games.
Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Sirles, getting a big old buck with your pop, and let us know if you need help with any of that deer jerky, bud.
Absolutely will do, guys. As always, go Big Red.
Good stuff from Jeremiah Sirles, and Husker Insider with us. Good to get his take on things. Gary Barnett, he's coached a lot of ball. Get his take on Whip and Mickey and Michigan and some college football weekend. Reminder about your friends at Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and can send emails, as always, to the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Gary Barnett on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Hall of Fame football coach Gary Barnett with us. Coach, big old Sweet 16 today for Junior, and he's off and driving. We are all going to buckle in and white-knuckle this thing. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Still trying to get over this cold, but, it's just, I think there's a lot of people that have it, and I've got it, but keep on keeping on.
You are not off to La La Land for tomorrow night?
I actually am going to Vegas this afternoon, and then from Vegas on to Los Angeles tomorrow morning. So.
Okay. Well, it'll be quite the challenge in Ann Arbor for Nebraska, the largest point spread against Nebraska ever. Right now it sits at 31 points.
Yep.
And it's a tough ask for anybody, but Nebraska's really up against it with the backup quarterback situation. And Coach, I know you keep your ear on Nebraska from afar. It doesn't look like Whipple and Mickey are on the same page. Mickey wants maybe to turn to the ground game, and Whip wants to score points, which is what every good offensive coordinator wants.
Well, it's that happens. I mean, Whip was a controversial hire of sorts in that he's a guy that's been around. He's been a head coach. He's done about everything, and he has his way of doing things, and that's the way most coordinators are, or most that have proven themselves. And so then Mickey's trying to win this job, earn this job, and you're spinning your wheels. So you're going to have a clash of titans there, and I think that's just pretty normal. And we're both, you and I, and our programs are in the same kind of position. I mean, we can't find any answers either, and I don't know that there are any answers, and that's probably exactly what Nebraska's facing. Is there just aren't any answers. You need a little luck, and you need the other team to play poorly, and things like that, and that's where we are right now. And so I think this is probably pretty common with interim coaches. So it's you got to live through it.
Coach, you've been on both sides of it. You've been a coordinator where the coaches want you to do something, and maybe you think, well, this is the way it needs to be. You've also been on the other side of it where, all right, this is what we need to do to win. I need you to change up what the game plan is. And it just feels a little bit like there's resistance there. And I'm interested here with Whipple and just what makes him really good, and then also what can be problematic with just that confidence a coordinator may have.
Well, I think he was brought in and given a free rein, and it was part of Scott's turnaround and changes within his staff. And he's looking at Mickey and saying, "Look, I've done this everywhere at the biggest levels, and here's what experience tells me." And Mickey's going, I want to be the head coach of Nebraska, and the only way I'm going to do that is if we find some way to get some points on the board and stop some people. And so, here's what I think we need to do. It's not your butt on the line, it's mine. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's hard. When I was a coordinator, my 2 years, I had one real veteran group of coaches for one, and then the second group I had real young new coaches, and Ben Gregory's first coaching experience out of high school, and so I knew all the answers to the offense, and I had three guys who really didn't even know the offense. So I had two different situations, and so it's I haven't run into, but I have seen the kind of situation you guys are experiencing right now.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, the coaching carousel continues to spin, and a couple of names this week, and Football Scoop was in on one of them. But your reaction, how well do you know Gary Patterson, and how well do you know Bronco Mendenhall? A couple of names that are out there maybe with Nebraska where Trev may be looking. That's just speculation, but part of it, again, reported by Football Scoop.
Yeah, well, Gary's a Midwestern guy, and he's a tough guy. He's tough on his coaches, but he's a darn good football coach, especially defensively. And I think he lets his offensive people do what they do. And so, he's been around. He's had his teams perform at a very high level. And Bronco's an interesting dude. Bronco and Gary aren't really the same cut, because Bronco's he's just a different dude, and he's really interesting. And he's a guy who likes challenges, wants challenges. He's he's very content, he and his wife, with taking on really tough jobs. And so it's, both of them have been without staffs now for a couple of years, so, or at least a year and a half. So they've got to put them together, and that would be the biggest challenge, I think, for either one of them. But they've worked with a number of guys that would come work with them again. So it's, I think both those names are good names for Nebraska.
Do you like the fit, knowing Lincoln like you do?
Yeah, I like the fit for Patterson especially. I think Bronco's more of a Rocky Mountain guy, but if he can fit into Charlottesville, Virginia, he can certainly fit into Lincoln, Nebraska, and feel comfortable. So I think the fits are pretty good for both guys.
When you look at both of these guys, what does this say if, in fact, these are two targets about the Nebraska job? Trev's been thorough, or Trev's been told no?
Oh, I think he's been thorough. And the two things about both these guys is you can announce them tomorrow and they can start work. And so that's a good thing about both of them. You don't have to wait till the last game. You don't have to wait to start putting together a staff. You just, if you name them now, then of course you got your own staff, the current staff that you got to try to at least motivate enough to keep them fighting for the rest of the year. But both guys are guys that aren't going to be involved with bowl games, aren't going to be involved with playoff games. So they're guys that can, be in Lincoln on Saturday night after the game.
Why don't you think it worked in Virginia for Bronco? I know they won the Coastal. And then with Gary's end at TCU, I mean, the guy's got a statue. They went to a Rose Bowl. This team that he recruited is number 4 in the country.
Well, I think in Bronco's case, he just needed a break from it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, he's more of a Rocky Mountain guy. I mean, he built a house out in Montana, and he and his sons are team ropers, and so I just think that the culture there is a little bit different. And Gary, in coaching, you sort of know you should leave after 5 to 7 years because he gets bored with you. And Gary's been there a long time. I can remember when I was coaching with Gary in an all-star game out in Hawaii, and he just started. And he says, "How many years you been doing this?" I said, 14. He said, "Oh, man, if I could make it to 14." Well, I think he made it to 16 or 18, so maybe more than that. So, the culture changes. You've got a new generation coming in every 10 years or every 8 years. And so it's just society, it's just life, and I think more of that than anything else.
Coach, rapid fire, we'll get your thoughts here. Bama, Ole Miss, what happens to Alabama if they lose, dare I say, a third game in a season?
Yeah, I don't know. Bama's favored by 12 in this game.
That's a lot.
I think Bama wins. I mean, I might take Ole Miss in the points if I were betting, but I think Bama wins this game.
Danger zone.
But let me tell you,
Go ahead.
Chris, I haven't been very good the last couple of weeks, so take this with a grain of salt out there, folks.
No, I know. It's just for fun, right?
Okay, good. Nobody calls me and says, "You dumb."
Yeah. No, that's all right. We love hearing it. We go the other way. I'm kidding. Georgia at Mississippi State. Pirate upset alert. At least you take the 16-10. Georgia coming off that emotional win.
Yeah, I think you take the 16, but they're not going to win, I don't believe. Georgia, they just blew the doors off Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So, no, I think Georgia's really good, and but I sort of like the Pirates staying within 16.5.
I think you're right. K-State's at Baylor. Baylor minus 2.5. It's just the continual next big game for K-State. That was a good comeback last week. They just couldn't finish.
Yeah, I like K-State a lot, and Adrian's playing at a high level. It started at 3, it's 2.5, so something's happening. But I like Chris Kleiman. I'm taking K-State in the points.
TCU, Texas, the Gary Patterson Bowl, Coach.
Yeah, I know. TCU's got to run out of luck eventually. I mean, they cannot keep coming from behind. But I think I take them with the points. But I think Texas. I think Texas might win this game, but TCU they have a way to get back into every game, and I don't think they've had the lead in the game in any of the last 5 or 6 games they played, so till the end. But I think Texas probably wins this game, but this is a hard one.
How about Nebraska minus 31?
Well, how can you turn down 31 points?
I can show you.
Yeah, well, we're 34-point underdogs tomorrow night. So,
well, okay, there you go.
Yeah, so it's hard to turn down 31 points, but if you've got internal strife, then more than likely it's about right.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio, coach off to Los Angeles for the Colorado USC game Friday night. Coach, we'll get caught up again. Always great to spend time with you, get to feeling better, and thanks for a few minutes.
All right, get that car fixed, Chris.
Coach Barnett, words of wisdom there. Great to spend time with Barty, get his thoughts on college football. We'll get the rundown of the NFL with VSiN's Danny Burke, Burke's Best Bets. Maybe a steak and a beer bet for us for Thursday Night Football.
Oh, tonight's going to be so unpredictable with the weather.
All right, bet on the weather.
I don't think we knew it.
Danny Burke coming up here from VSiN.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We say hi to Danny Burke, VSiN Sports Network. You hear him all over the air, weekends with VSiN at Danny Burke 5, where you follow him on Twitter. Daddy, pretty hot and heavy NFL weekend. We'll start there. You have Mother Nature wanting to see some Thursday night football, potentially Atlanta, Carolina. Let's start with Thursday night.
All right, so for Thursday night, fellas, I do lean toward the Falcons in this spot, but it's really a heavy public play. I mean, Carolina is a terrible team, and look, I know that the last time they played was a ginormous shootout and just a crazy ending. I'm not sure that will be replicated. But I just feel like Carolina is more like the team we saw against the Bengals. Now, I'm not going to say that Patterson is going to be like Mixon and get 5 total touchdowns, but I just think Carolina is really not as good as they were against Tampa and as great as they were offensively against the Falcons in that game. But simultaneously, I mean, you look at this Falcons defense, it's just horrid all around. So what I did, again, small lean toward Atlanta in this game, but didn't end up playing it. The way that I went about this one, just trying to pull up my numbers really quick, I did Cordero Patterson over his rushing yards, 51.5. Now, he's back in the mix, came back from his injury last week, got 2 touchdowns. He's actually scored in every game except one at Los Angeles against the Rams. He should have a great opportunity tonight against the Panthers' run defense that's allowing opponents 140 total rushing yards per game. They rank 23rd in DVOA run defense, and they're allowed about 4.5 yards per rush attempt. Carolina is also getting run on 31 times per game, which is second most. And Mariota, as we know, doesn't really love to throw the ball. They don't want to force him to do that if they don't have to. So now that you got Patterson as your lead back, I saw his rushing yards prop at 51.5. He's getting about 77 yards per game, 5.4 yards per carry, over 14 carries. My number has him to about 15 carries for 70 rushing yards. So I pulled the trigger on him over 51.5, and I'd probably play it. Ideally, you get lower than 55.5, but if you really want to get involved, I'd still say that's a go at that price. The other bet that I had then was P.J. Walker over 173.5 for his passing yards. Now, this one, actually, the better number is right now, after I placed it, like 165.5. But I tell you how bad Atlanta's defense is, man. I mean, they're allowing 310 passing yards per game, and 417 total yards of offense. They rank 29th against the pass, according to DVOA. They're allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete 69% of their passes, which is second worst. Falcons allowing 28 completions per game, dead last. They're also getting thrown on 40 times per game, which is second most in the NFL. The first go-around, P.J. Walker only had 19 completions, yet he threw for 317 yards. That's almost 17 yards per completion. I'm assuming they're going to be trailing in this game. They'll need to be passing it. They'll be able to at least move the ball against a crap Falcons secondary. So, again, I played P.J. Walker over 173.5 passing yards. I think he gets to about 200 in this game. So those are the two props I got as an official play, and I do have a lean toward Atlanta for a side.
Danny, quickly, the hurricane, though, moving into the area, is that affecting how you're going to be betting tonight? Sounds like rain most of the night, maybe 15, 20-mile-an-hour winds throughout this game. Does that affect anything? I mean, I think that's why that P.J. Walker prop is so low.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, P.J. being low, that definitely doesn't help, and it boosts anything good on the side of Cordero Patterson. But, look, I mean, they can kind of scheme around it, and as vulnerable as this Atlanta defense is, that's kind of why I still think they can make these dink and dumps work when you got Hubbard back in the mix. You still got Foreman who can get in the passing game, and you still got some other guys like DJ Moore who can create something out of screens and whatnot. So because of how bad this Atlanta defense is, I think you can still look to take advantage of it. Because of those conditions, you're getting a way better number.
Danny Burke with his VSiN Sports Network Burke's Best Bets with the NFL. This weekend, Buffalo still favored, even though Josh Allen's going to be icing the elbow, -3.5 Bills, Vikings. Record-wise, that's the matchup this weekend.
Man, this is tricky to say the least. I hate getting involved with Minnesota on the road because even you look at what happened against the Commanders last week. Yeah, they won, but they pushed, and they should have done a lot better, to be quite frank. Case Keenum, well, he's had his moments. You call it a Case Keenum revenge game if you really want to, but I would bet the under in this game if I had to do anything. Buffalo, assuming it's Keenum, going to have to work out some kinks in the passing game. They have no run game, but maybe they're going to try to stress that more. So Minnesota's defense isn't really strong, but Buffalo may be able to do enough, or conversely, Minnesota's defense will look well off because it's against a backup quarterback and a terrible run offense. Then conversely, Minnesota, again, they go through their stalls, especially on the road. They have great offensive pieces, but they do get limited and will get limited against one of the best defenses in the NFL. So that's why I would look toward the under. In terms of a side, my man, I got nothing here, guys. Like at 3.5, I think he could. I wouldn't bet Buffalo over 3. I would honestly tease up Minnesota to maybe over 10 points. That would be what I would do with a side. But, again, my top play would be something revolving around the total and going under.
Danny, let's go to Sunday morning football, the NFL's first ever regular season game in Germany. The Seahawks taking on the Buccaneers, where the Buccaneers are a 3-point favorite. What's your lean here?
I'm betting the under for this game, under 44.5. You've already seen some big movement for this game. It opened 46.5, and now, like I said, you're getting it at 44 in the hook. This Bucs team, my goodness, talk about making me sweat last Sunday. I had them on the money line, and they somehow came through. I don't know how, but they did it. But their offense has been annoyingly frustrating. I mean, they're only getting 5 yards per play, which is 29th in the NFL. And they have these play calls where it's just behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know why Leftwich is dialing this up. It clearly isn't working. The receivers are dropping easy passes left and right, and they have virtually no running offense with Leonard Fournette. They're throwing the ball the most in the league and running it the fewest. Seattle's defense is actually fairly solid. Give credit where credit's due. Pete Carroll has done a tremendous job on that side of the ball and with the rookies they brought into the organization. They ranked 12th in overall DVOA defense and 14th against the pass. So with an already struggling Bucs offense, I think Seattle can limit them enough. And then you look at the other side, well, Seattle's offense, yes, you have the most efficient passer in Geno Smith, but if Pete Carroll can run the ball, that's going to be his number one option. And that's the weaker part of Tampa Bay's defense. And their defense is still good. We're just saying they're bad because the Bucs look bad. And, yeah, they've regressed because they were amazing the last 2 years. But, again, they're still good. They're 6th against the pass, 13th against the run. They're allowing 4.6 yards per carry. So they're not terrible. They're just not as dominant as the past standards have set for them. And being in an international spot, I think that can cause for a lower scoring game in general. So if you get it over 44, I like playing that game under.
Any voice in your ear on taking Nebraska in the 31?
Oh, my gosh. I don't know. You'd want to say yes, but I've said that for so many games with Nebraska this year. I don't like to lay high spread. You know what? Just wait for Michigan to get out to an early lead and get a better number and then jump in on Nebraska because they'll still be competing in the second half while Michigan kind of gives up. So I'm staying away from my favorite team pre-flop there, but I will say one more. Bet the Bears this weekend, baby. They're beating the Lions. There's another hometown play for you. If you don't want to bet Nebraska, trust me with the Bears.
Justin Fields, he does look like he's coming into his own.
Over/under on Fields rushing yards, Danny. Where you going?
Man, he's probably going to get 70+. I cashed in on that easy last week, setting the record, so maybe you have to go back to the well once again.
There we have it. Danny Burke with his VSiN Sports Network. Daddy, take care.
Thank you, fellas. Have a good one.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity on a Thursday. Next 2 shows, we are on the road. Want to see you up at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista, just stuck between Cabela's and the Embassy Suites, La Vista. And we're there 4 to 6 tomorrow, Friday road show. And then Saturday special, Saturday weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio, noon to 2. So excited for that.
You're burying the lead, though. The perfect pregame for karaoke night at Hail Varsity.
Yeah, that's right.
Is come watch Hail Varsity Radio, get a couple drinks in you. I know I need a couple drinks in me before
What
I
is
get
your
on the mic.
karaoke go-to?
There's a couple.
You're a Sweet Caroline guy.
No, I really love Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver.
Okay.
It's easy. Everyone knows the words. Everyone sings along.
Right.
It's great. Or Rockstar by Nickelback.
You are going to just dial up the Nickelback, are you?
People hate on Nickelback. There's some good Nickelback songs out there.
Okay. I'll let you own that one and run with it.
I will 100% own that one. People hated on Nickelback for no reason, like the late 2000s. Nickelback made some bangers back in the day.
You have Creed. I'm sure you could dial up some Creed if you're man enough to do Nickelback.
Can you take
That's
me
enough. Let me talk about our
higher?
friends at Red Zone Tickets. RedZoneTickets.com, selling fun since 2001. You have a game or an event you want to go to or can't get to, they buy and sell tickets. RedZoneTickets.com. They are local. They are Omaha proud and a Better Business Bureau rating of A+. They're reliable because of that 100% guarantee on all orders. You'll receive authentic tickets and experiences. We're talking Husker football, Husker volleyball, NFL action. You want to go see Green Bay? God love you. You want to see the Chiefs, the Donks? Hey, they can take care of all of that for you. College World Series. Maybe you're into the theater. Or, hey, concerts. Dave Matthews going on Saturday night at CHI. But Red Zone Tickets, your source where you need to be, and get that item crossed off your bucket list. Create the memories that last a lifetime. Log on, RedZoneTickets.com, RedZoneTickets.com. So back-to-back road shows. Elijah alluded to the karaoke following us at Hail Varsity Club in La Vista. They got a sweet lunch deal going Monday through Friday.
It's a burger, fries, and a drink, right?
Yeah, burger, fries, and a soda, $10. The burgers are incredible.
Well, I mean, especially when you go anywhere else around town and, like, the burger itself is $12. It doesn't even come with fries and a drink. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, big what the heck going on there. Are we going to dive into tonight's debauchery that is Carolina v. Atlanta?
Might as well. I mean,
What's the line? Danny laid it out for us.
I believe it's at 2.5, correct?
2.5.
2.5 for Atlanta.
For Atlanta. I like Atlanta just because I think they've got the, don't say this often, better quarterback option. There's that. You've got a depleted in-transition Carolina squad with really no more stars. But it is in Carolina. I know the hurricane's not fun, or tropical storm Nicole's problematic, but do you...
If you let me buy the Panthers up a point to 3.5, would you do that?
No. I'll give you 3.
3.
You can buy up a half. I'm not going to give you a whole point.
I'll do 3. I'll take the Panthers for 3.
I'm the one that's rolling the dice here, giving you points to a home dog.
You're the one who picked. I'll take the Panthers for 3.
All right. And we will continue this streak of steak and a beers that someday will get paid off. A whole side of beef. We'll talk to you and hopefully see you tomorrow. The Hail Varsity Club Roadshow Friday with Hail Varsity Radio. Take care.